Welcome to the Encore Audio Archives YouTube channel. I'm Taper Dave, and this is my channel. I've uploaded hundreds of talks here that I've recorded at meetings in West LA, and I've also recorded conventions starting in 2013. I've got a bunch of those up. And Walt and Mary Murray, the original owners of Encore Audio Archives, started the company in the 80s, and Walt recorded Joe and Charlie's and a bunch of stuff down in Vista, California. My sobriety date is June 20th of 1994. I hope you find something you like, so please like and subscribe to my channel and comment down below. If you want to hear something that I don't have or that you don't see, I'll see that I get it. Anyways, take care and have a great day if you want to.
Our main speaker tonight is Cubby S.
Good evening. My name is Cubby Selby. I am an alcoholic. I'm also a fool, and it's nice to know that. I want to thank you for asking me to speak. I love participating in Alcoholics Anonymous. I should start by telling you that I'm an alcoholic that never drank in high school and I never drank in college. So I'm an alcoholic that never went to high school and I never went to college. I did learn how to drink. And I was successful for a while. But one thing I want to emphasize is that I never know what's happening to me at the moment it's happening. It's not until years later that I have any idea of what has already happened. So I never knew what was going on all my life until I got sober and had an opportunity to look at the experience in my life with the principles of Alcoholics Anonymous, which can be a little embarrassing because I suddenly find out I don't have issues. I'm just riddled with self-centered fear. It's kind of a bring down, especially when you're trying to be philosophical. Oh, you're just scared. Oh, come on, man. That's not very existential, is it? Anyway, I love alcohol. I mean, I dearly, dearly love alcohol. It is truly a gift of the gods. Or to be more specific, the goddesses. They're the ones that gave us booze, God bless them. See, and I know what they did with the fruit in the Garden of Eden, man. You think they ate it? No. They fermented that sucker. Stomped all over it, saved it up in a tub, and they got it on. Here we are. My lineage is very elite. Anyway, I love alcohol. For me, it's not a coincidence that the word spirit means God and it means booze. Because if you're anything like me, drinking is a spiritual experience. Oh. See, I never knew that all my life I was overwhelmed with shame and guilt and fear, all these good little things. All I knew is that there was something evil and rotten about me. And I had to hide from these feelings because I knew you shouldn't have them. So I went through life like a scream, looking for a mouth. I was a very intense young boy. As a matter of fact, there were a few times when I was young where I blacked out before the first drink. My need for drinking was extraordinary, shall we say. But I had no idea that this is what I was feeling. And I've come to believe that the worst feeling of all, the most horrendous thing, was feeling separated from me. And I have no idea that's what I'm feeling, because that's how I felt all my life. I live in a world of duality. I have to have things with which to compare. Otherwise, I have no idea. I don't know what left is without a right, or up without a down. So I had no idea that's what I was feeling until something changed that feeling. Now, when I feel separated from me, I have to feel separated from you, and I have to feel separated from whatever this thing is that created us. which means I'm all alone in this rotten, stinking, miserable world that I've never liked, that has always been hostile and antithetical to everything I ever believed in or dreamed of. So I am really alone until I take a drink. Oh, Lordy. Man, oh man, when I take a drink, I become a holy man. I become one whole, solid, unified being. And I have a sense of peace that I never knew existed. I never knew it was part. It was beyond my imagination. How can I imagine that? Absolutely wondrous. So I cannot accept that I'm powerless over alcohol because it just takes care of everything. Now, my drinking is characterized by a lot of problems, a lot of violence, but I'm still. Every now and then it works. Now, when I drink, I black out rather rapidly. I become homicidal, and people object to that. And I have to accept that what people tell me I do is true. I mean, if people tell you after a while, you say, well, probably an accurate statement. So it's true, I'll drink, black out, and I might kill you. But that's the chance I have to take, you see. And believe me, I'm willing to take that chance. After all, another Yahoo more or less is no big deal. We all go belly up someday anyway. And I'll do anything to experience that sense of unity and that sense of peace. So obviously, alcohol did a whole lot for me. And it had to do a whole lot for me in order for me to be willing to let it do so much to me. And ultimately, it destroyed everything I held of value in my life. To put it as simply as possible, I didn't do all the loving, kind things I always wanted to do, and I did all the heinous and miserable things I knew no human being should ever do. But in between, it saved my life. I left home at 15. I was a merchant seaman during the Second War, and by the time I was 18, I was in a hospital dying. I had TB. Both lungs were totally destroyed, and I literally didn't have any lungs left. Yet, just 2 weeks before this particular day, while going through the canal in Antwerp, I jumped off the ship, I ran to a wine shop, got all the wine I could carry, and I ran back to the ship. Now, I didn't think anything of it at the time, but today I look upon that incident, and I realize that I ran that distance without any lungs. And I seriously believe that a non-alcoholic wouldn't consider doing that for 4 or 5 bottles of wine. However, non-alcoholics don't perceive singleness of purpose in the same way that I do, of course. It made absolute sense to me at that point, and it still does. I know absolutely I would do exactly the same thing under those same circumstances, because it was doing something for me that I could not do for myself and nothing else had ever done. And I couldn't accept that my life had become unmanageable, yet by the time I was 22 years old, I had spent more than 3 years in bed. I had 10 ribs cut out. I had 1 lung collapsed, a piece of the other lung cut out. And I used an experimental drug to keep me alive. And it impaired my vision and my hearing. My inner ear was almost totally destroyed. And I couldn't, excuse me. And it petrified all my muscles, and I couldn't walk properly. I'd fall down in the dark. And it fried my brain. It literally destroyed my brain cells. And then I got hepatitis in the blood transfusions. And then things started to get bad. And that's a guarantee we have as drunks. No matter how bad things are, drinking will eventually make them worse. You know, you cannot avoid or evade the progression of alcoholism. It's just, it is there. But I have to defend my right to drink, so I can't see these things at the time, because I've always known in my innermost self that I can't drink. So in order to keep that information away from my awareness, I had to develop a belief system of lies. I had to teach myself what is true is false and what is false is true. The basic lie being that alcohol is the answer, not the problem. And one of the things I did to protect my right to drink was use heroin. because my drinking was getting out of hand and the violence was accelerating. And I didn't move around too much when I was shooting stuff. So from that point of view, it worked, because it proved conclusively to me that I'm not an alcoholic. I mean, I even stopped wetting the bed, so how can I be an alcoholic? Now, this sobriety treatment I instituted got a little habitual, and the second step, of course, implies that we're nuts. And what I did is I left New York and I moved to Hollywood to get away from drugs. And because I'm so sincere, it worked. Make a long story short, I got busted. They strapped me down in solitary and I kicked that habit, which is the no-frills approach of doing things, but it sure is guaranteed. Anyway, I stayed in there a couple of months, and then somebody put me in a hospital for a month. And eventually I got out. When I got out, I hadn't had a drink for 90 days. And I could no longer really believe in the belligerence and the hostility that I had always generated to hide my fear from you and from me. And I was so terrified I couldn't go through an intersection unless I was going for a drink. It was the only motivation that got me across the street. That went on for 15 months, and the woman I was living with brought another woman home with 3 children because they had no place to live. We moved them in, and this fellow used to come and visit this woman. One Friday night he came and he visited with me. Now, I don't remember more than a total perhaps of the entire evening, and I think he was there all night. But I do remember him coming into the room. Seems to me he didn't even look at my bottle of wine, and he sat down. And the next thing I remember was he got up and he walked over to where I was sitting, and he dropped a book in my lap. And he said, "I'm tired. You read to me." So I assumed from that remark that he had been reading to me, but I have no direct conscious memory of that. I remember putting the book on the table, opening it up, and that's the last thing I remember from that night. But it turned out that I read from the book Alcoholics Anonymous. And evidently I read enough to identify with the problem and to recognize the answer. He took me to a meeting the following night, and I've been sober ever since. And that was the 29th of March, 1969. And a couple of things happened in the next few hours that forced me to believe that miracles are possible without my consent. And I'll tell you, I'm delighted to know that. Because given the nature of my alcoholic personality, if such were not the case, I would forever be at the airport waiting for my ship to come in, getting very, very upset by this whole procedure. However, I've come to believe absolutely that at some point I must make a conscious decision to cooperate with this miracle if I want to experience it for the rest of my life. If you have decided you want what we have and are willing to go to any lengths to get it, it's just that simple. Sooner or later, I have to make that decision. So he took me to this meeting, and I hated everything about it, especially the people. The rest of it wasn't too bad, but the people, good Lord. Nothing like a few hundred hysterical drunks in one little tiny room, all with their teeth hanging out. It was just... I really hated and loathed this meeting. And when I left that meeting that night, there was one thing I knew with absolute certainty, and that is that I am not an alcoholic. Yet I was given the gift of sobriety that night. The obsession to drink was removed, and I haven't had a drink since then. And I didn't fight drinking. I didn't try not to drink that I can recall. I just didn't drink. And when this guy took me home, I heard myself say, "Can I go to another meeting?" Now, I had no intention of saying that. And I tell you, I realize today that I did not say that. Not the I that I identified as Cubby at that moment in my life. At that moment in my life, I thought Cubby consisted of this body, the mind, and all those hideous and heinous thoughts that went through the mind. I not only believed they were my thoughts, I believed they defined me. So naturally, I hated me, I was terrified of me, I loathed and detested me. But there's so much more to me than that. There is, at the very least, an inner self, an inner spirit. And that inner spirit recognized the power in that room that could restore me to sanity, and it spoke those words through me. And when I spoke those words, I took the second step. Now, the next morning, I got up and I started my day in the usual way. I started a fight with this woman I was living with in order to justify storming out of the house and getting drunk. Now, I've always known I can't drink, and I know I'm going to do something I don't really want to do, and I have to do something that's really detrimental to my well-being, but I have to find a way to justify it. And the best way is just to accuse whoever you're with of whatever. It doesn't make any difference. And the thing is to do it in such a manner that they start screaming at you. You're saying, therefore, you're not responsible for this. We all know how to do that. Anyway, I don't have to tell you. You taught me, you rotten bitch. So anyway, I started this fight. I went storming out of the house. And I was on the corner waiting across the street. And that same voice that I've heard screaming in my head was screaming that morning. Yet on the basis of one AA meeting, which I detested, 2 words in that lifelong litany were changed. And it said, I'll show her. I won't drink. I'll stay sober. And my body turned around. I went back to the house. And that morning, the second step took me. Now, I have been mad as I had her most of my sobriety. And I got sober and I found out why I had to drink. Those demons were really, really at me. But I've been absolutely sober since that moment, sane since that moment with respect to alcohol. How I define sanity is very simple. I can no longer believe the lies necessary to believe in order to justify taking the first drink. I can no longer believe that drinking would improve the quality of my life in any way. I have been totally and absolutely sane since that moment. My body turned around, went back to the house, and for 30 days I didn't drink, and at the end of 30 days I'm stark raving sober. As we all know, there's only one thing worse than drinking, and that's not drinking. That's precisely why do we come out on a night like this to sit around here and talk about this stuff? You don't know how I don't know how to live without drinking. The book says it in many different ways. One point it says we realize the bottle is only a symbol. What we have is a living problem. I do not know how to live in this world without drinking. But one thing I can learn how to do is practice these principles in all my affairs, and I find that I can attain a certain degree of comfort while needing to do what's necessary in this world. So I'm stark raving sober, and I go to a meeting of Alcoholics Anonymous and ask for help. And that day I was given the gift of recovery. Now, this is all so simple and so obvious that it's invisible to me. You know, I can't see it. And the reason that the answer to all my problems that night was instantly and automatically there is very simple, because the answer to my problems is in the asking. It's impossible to have a problem without already having the answer. It's a spiritual impossibility. However, I still have this belief system of lies that I nurtured to protect my right to drink. But when I come up to you and say, help me, tell me what to do, not can we discuss this, just tell me what in the hell to do, I've given up. I've surrendered. Now, I don't know that, but in effect, that's what's happened. And then instantly, the answer which is within me, and only within me, there are no answers outside of me for me. There is nothing outside of me other than an opportunity to give everything away. But that answer which is always within me can then transcend that belief system of lies. And then when you share with me what you did at that point in your sobriety, you make it possible for me to recognize the answer in whatever way I need to stay sober for the next 24 hours. So after 30 days, I asked for help, and I was given the gift of recovery. Now, I have a sticky wicket because I'm face to face with that 3-letter word. And the kindest thing I've ever said about God is that it's dog spelled backwards. After my last operation, I was in a coma for 4 days. At some point in that period, I opened my eyes as a chaplain walked in the room, and I stayed conscious long enough. I don't know, 2-3 seconds, just long enough to shake my head no and watch him leave. because I knew he was there to give me the hocus pocus, and I didn't want to have anything to do with it. I was determined that if I died, I was going to die giving God the finger. And if there was such a thing called God, I couldn't wait to die so I could meet it, spit in its face, and tell the weasel what I thought of it. Now, I've been told that's an attitude. And AA is the only place I know where you can bring an attitude like mine and have it turned into a love affair. Not by going to church or taking religious instructions or studying theology or dogma or metaphysics or psychology, but by not taking one drink one day at a time and hanging out with a bunch of sober drunks. And that's exactly what has happened to me. And I didn't know what to do about this third step, but I hear people talking about prayer, and what I ended up doing is copying the third step prayer, the seventh step prayer, and the St. Francis prayer, and tacking them on the wall. And I'd read them in the morning, go about my business, read them at night. And it seemed like everyone is saying you have to kneel in prayer, you have to get on your knees. And it was kind of hard to imagine doing that. And I still don't know that I want to be sober. I don't know that. It's a long time before I realized I want to be sober. Yet I so desperately wanted to be sober, I actually tried to kneel and pray. Seems like 20 and 30 times a day I would try and kneel and pray, and I couldn't do it. My knees absolutely refused to have anything to do with this nonsense. And then when I was sober 4 months, I took the first step. When I finished, my sponsor showed me the pages in the book to read to tell you exactly what to do for 6 and 7. I went home and I did as the book suggests. When I had taken the sixth step, I was made aware of it. I've come to believe that the essence of the sixth step is simply that when there's no longer a payoff in the defect, I'm willing to let it go. It seems to me that I've had the insane belief all my life that I could avoid pain by pursuing pleasure. Always baffled why I ended up so miserable. I can't see the simple and obvious. Pain and pleasure are inseparable. You can't separate the heads from the tails of a coin. They're absolutely inseparable. The only difference is perception. One day, the greatest pleasure in the world is a drink. The next day, the most horrendous misery is a drink. It's just a difference of perception. See, I don't hold on to the pain of resentment, but what I will cling to is the pleasure of judgment. Thinking I can go home after the meeting, sit in my chair, send the weasel out for a pizza, because when I get inside my shrunken pumpkin head, I don't need God or you, I don't need nothing. And I can do what I want. All the judgment just tear you apart. And then if things get really bad at 3 o'clock in the morning and I'm in a cold sweat and knotted up in pain, well, I can just roll out of bed and hocus pocus God. Oh, God, it hurts. It hurts. Or I can call you up at 3 o'clock in the morning, right? See, it doesn't occur to me that if I give up the pleasure of judging you, it's impossible to experience the pain of resenting you. So when there's no longer a payoff in the defect, I've found I'm willing to let it go. Sometimes it takes a lifetime to see exactly what that payoff may be, because it may be one that's no longer operable, something I'm not even conscious of anymore. So anyway, when I taken the sixth step, I was made aware. Without thinking, I was on my knees taking the seventh step. And that day I was given a gift of prayer. I've come to believe the gift of prayer is the most precious thing we're given by whatever this power is that created us. With the gift of prayer, it takes on a living reality in our lives. And I know from my experience as the prayer that there is nothing to get, there is only everything to give. And it's only in the process of giving it away that I become aware of having it in the first place. I also know from my experience as the prayer that I don't pray to God, that there is absolutely nothing to pray to, but I pray from God, and it is all totally and absolutely an inside job. And I believe the prayer that mends the broken hearts and heals the sick minds, that we all bring Alcoholics Anonymous as a song of love we sing to this thing called God. I believe that song is heard in every heart throughout the world and is heard throughout the entire universe. And with steps 10 and 11, we can not only sit and hear that song, but experience the simple truth that in all of the universe there is only one song, and we are that song. All of God's kids make up that song, which means that that song is always in constant change, constant change. So to whatever extent I can let go of everything is the extent to which I'll experience my part in that song. With the 9th step, I was given a gift of love. I have been given up for dead 4 times in a hospital, numerous times in the streets. And the only thing that kept me alive was what I thought was my hatred for God. It literally animated me. And in 6 months with you, it was turned into a love affair. And I wasn't aware of it, I didn't know how it happened. But later I read Alcoholics Anonymous Comes of Age. In the back of that book, they quote an old Spanish philosopher. It's a little line that explained my entire life. The line says, "Those who deny God deny him because of their despair at not finding him." I read that line and I finally understood my life. All the madness, all the torture and torment finally made sense. Excuse me. An old axiom says the holiest ground in the world is where an ancient hatred has been turned into a current love. So because of what has happened for me in Alcoholics Anonymous, wherever I am standing on the holiest ground in the world. And I believe it is impossible to take the first 9 steps without standing on the holiest ground in the world. It may take you as long as it took me to become aware of that simple fact, but I believe that's an inevitable and predictable result of the decisions and actions preceding that step. With the 12th step, I have this wondrous gift, my own personal relationship with whatever this power is that created me. As having had a spiritual awakening is the result of these steps. It's the only thing we're working towards and for is simply a spiritual awakening. Among other things, in the back of the book in the second appendix, it defines spiritual experience, spiritual awakening, as a personality change sufficient to recover from the disease of alcoholism. That's very simple language. I can understand the language itself and I can understand what it's saying. I can identify with it. Among other things, the word spirit simply means essence. The Latin root is spiritus, and it means breath. We're not dealing with some complicated and involved theological or dogmatic concept. We're simply dealing with the essence of life, the breath of life. And the book tells us precisely where we find this great reality. It's deep within ourselves. It cannot be found anywhere else, only deep within ourselves. Now, obviously, I thought I'd have a spiritual awakening and I'd be God's little sunbeam. I'd never say another word in anger. I would be kindness. I would be compassion. I would be crazy. I thought that was all part of the past. I didn't know that more would be revealed meant I'm going to find out why I had to drink. And my disease, it starts to come alive when I don't drink. It just tortured until all those demons just really started to rack me over the coals. And for many, many years, I battled my demons. I tried to destroy them until I finally learned how to acknowledge my demons and in that way defang those suckers. But until then, I was just mad as not every day, but often enough. After being together for 15 years, my wife finally had to leave because her sobriety and her life were being threatened by my illness. I'd stay locked in the house in my room for 2 or 3 days at a time, no food, no water, trying to knock the house down with my head. That's not happy, joyous, and free, man. And you can't live with somebody like that. I couldn't live with me. How could she live with me? And fortunately, for my sake, I accepted the need for her responsibility to leave. So I wasn't consumed with those hideous, horrible fantasies that always followed a busted relationship in the past. Now, we were living in Massachusetts at the time, and I had been physically sick for many years, as well as bananas. And we didn't have any money. And a friend back here said that our son, Bill, who was 12, he elected to stay with me. And his friend said that Billy and I could come back here, stay with him until I got on welfare. And that's what we did. I got on welfare, and I got a little 2-room apartment for Billy and myself. And when we moved into that apartment, we had 2 suitcases each. He had an old army cot somebody gave him to sleep on, and I had a piece of foam rubber somebody gave me to sleep on. And that was the extent of our stuff. That's what we had. And I was 14 years sober. I was suddenly a single parent on welfare. And up until this time, this very moment, I don't understand. I just don't know how I survived those years. I'd get up in the morning and I'd get Billy up. I'd make breakfast for him. We'd pray, we'd meditate. And he'd go off to school and I'd sit there and cry. I just had no way of dealing with my life and the terrible, overwhelming pain and agony of my wife leaving. I've never had a physical pain like that in my life. I've had a lot of physical pain, but I never had one like that. I thought broken heart was a figure of speech. I didn't know it was also a physical reality. And I just had no means of just dealing with it. Somehow, I didn't drink, I went to meetings, and I did what I could to help drunks. And then I experienced the fellowship in a way that I never had before. Because you literally fed us, you clothed us. Everything necessary for sustaining life came from the fellowship of Alcoholics Anonymous. Until that point in my life, I used to draw a clear distinction between program and fellowship. And I can no longer do that. I can no longer separate myself from you, from this program, or from this thing that created us and gave us this program. It's all either one or it doesn't exist at all. Now that Christmas, I didn't know what I was going to do for Bill. It seemed so unfair that a 12-year-old boy shouldn't have a Christmas because of my illness. So what we ended up doing was going down to Skid Row and serving food to the people. And it was one of the greatest days of my life because Billy was so happy making sure all the kids down there got extra pie and extra milk that he literally lit up all of Skid Row. It was absolutely phenomenal. And that's what we did while we were living together on Christmas time. And we didn't have a car, so we did a lot of walking. And we'd be walking the street together, and he'd reach over and he'd hold my hand. And he'd look up at me and he'd say, "You know, Dad, I really love you." And all of a sudden, all that pain had be gone. And it was such a wonderful, wonderful thing. I'm so honored to be part of such a wonderful human being. And there was only one thing that would relieve my pain. And as I would remind myself that love cannot die. Love can only grow and increase and expand and bless and bring peace and joy. And that it didn't make any difference where my wife was or where I was, who she was with or what she was doing. That our love was always growing and growing and expanding. And that would instantly relieve the pain. It always came back, but it would be gone for a while anyway. And one day she called and said she was in love with someone else. And by that time, I was dry inside. I couldn't even cry. I was just so totally and absolutely empty. And then something just phenomenal happened. I was praying for my wife because, as I said, I was very fortunate in accepting responsibility for her need to leave. And I was praying for my wife one morning, and this incredible thing happened. I heard myself thanking God that she had someone to love, that she had someone to share her life with, to share her body with, to share her program with, and to share her God with. Now, I know I'm not capable of sitting down and consciously formulating such a prayer, but I don't believe I'm supposed to or need to. I believe my only responsibility is to continually make the decision to be loving, and then take the appropriate action. And in this case, the action was prayer. And this is what I truly believe with all of my being. This is what I believe happened. That your love for me wrote that prayer. And you not only wrote the prayer, but you put the words in my heart, so that when my heart broke open to the love that has always been within it. And I could speak those words and experience the results of that prayer. The language of love in Alcoholics Anonymous takes on an infinite number of forms. See, what I found here is not somebody else's concept of God. And it's not some institution's concept of God, and it's not my concept of God. What I found here is a power of infinite and unconditional love that has revealed itself to me from within me as a direct result of the program of Alcoholics Anonymous. When I got here like each and every one of us, insulated and isolated in that terrible, agonizing eye of alcoholism. And I get here, and the very first word of the program is we. We admit it. We admit each other to these rooms, and we admit each other to our hearts. And instantly, the I of my disease starts to become a part of the we of Alcoholics Anonymous. And in time, as we continue to practice these principles, we experience the one, the oneness of all life, from I to we to one. When I got here, you did not judge me by the appearance of my illness. You saw beyond the crazed, drunken beast that I believed I was. Beyond that, you saw a sober being. And within that sober being, you saw light, and you saw love. And you held that image of me in your mind as you nurtured me, you loved me, and most importantly of all, you allowed me to make every mistake I must make in order to learn what I need to learn to stay sober for the next 24 hours. And more as I continue to come back to you, I am becoming the image that you have of me, as you are becoming the image that I have of you. And together we are becoming the vision that God has of us. Thank you very much.
I think we got a great talk going on here. Thanks for watching the channel. Taper Dave here. Just curious, do you think this is better than Zoom? Okay, this is how I prepare my drone for launching. I like to do it inside the cab of my truck so I'm not standing outside in the weather. To install the joysticks for control, up and down, right and left, powered on. I have an Android phone that I use to connect it to the drone with. And it's actually controlled through the iPhone, through an app. Oops, wrong way. It's actually controlled through the iPhone, or through this Android phone, through the app. It's actually controlled through the Android phone, through an app, and you connect it through this short connection right here.
Remote control connected.
Remote control's connected. So I pull out the drone. I have to extend the legs. Long legs extended first, then the short legs. Remove the gimbal protector. Set that aside, then power it on one short burst, then one long burst. I lay it down. So I have to go to calibrate. So the drone's not connected yet. It shows you here as this drone gets disconnected, even though the remote's powered on. So the drone has to establish it's connected. So I go into the app to calibration mode. First, I'll calibrate the remote controller. Start calibration. Out, in, oop, out, in, up, down, and then this little wheel is to control the gimbal. So it's calibrated. Go to gimbal calibration, start calibration, and then it calibrates the gimbal. I don't know if that shows up. The gimbal's moving all over the place. Changes, you can see it on the video. And I'm calibrated to take off. It's acquired 7 satellites at the moment. There are 26 satellites up in the sky, which it has to acquire before you can take off. So it's connected. It's got enough satellites. This is white. I can go to press this little arrow button, swipe right to take off, and it would start the motors if I slid this to the right. But I'll wait till I get outside. Don't want to do it inside.